believeth. And down at the 11th verse it says, for the scripture says, whosoever believe on him shall not be ashamed. For there's no difference between the Jew and the Greek. For the same Lord over all is rich unto all that call upon him. For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. How then shall they call on him in who they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him of who they've not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And how shall they preach except they be sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace and bring glad tidings of good things. Last verse. But they have not all obeyed the gospel. For Isaiah said, Lord, who has believed our report? Well, right here, Paul has been preaching about 22 years when he penned this to the Romans. And during his 22 years of preaching, every time he had to mount up upon this sacred pulpit, wherever it might have been, and stand before the people, he has been faced, or he was faced, and we are faced with the same dilemma every time. And that is, Lord, what do I say to these people? Now, he knows what he was supposed to say. He got his instructions when the Lord called him on the road of Damascus. He said, Paul, I want you to go preach to the Gentiles.
That's right, that's right.
I want you to go tell the kings and the Jews about me.
That's right.
That's all I want you to do. But after 22 years, every time he has to stand before the folk, I believe that Paul had the same problem. I believe that Paul said, what do you want me to say to them, God?
All right.
He already had his instructions. But I believe he said, what do you want me to say? And his assignment was his biggest problem.
All right.
Stay with me. For 22 years, Paul had preached the gospel faithfully. And he had preached the gospel without end. And he did not get the proper rest because of how much preaching he had to do and how much went into preaching and how much went into praying just to hear a word from the Lord.
Yes, sir.
Some of you ain't never heard from God. Imagine what a preacher got to go through to hear from God. Every time he got to talk to some folk whose ears are full of wax and act like you don't have no Q-tips. We got to hear from God. 22 years.
22 years.
Been in prison many times.
That's right.
Was beaten severely with sticks and exposed to death time and time again for preaching what God wanted him to say. 5 times his countrymen, his brothers and his former colleagues beat him with cat o' nine tails. And if you don't know what that is, that's what they whipped Jesus with, that it was so bad that you couldn't even recognize who he was. 5 times because of Paul preaching what God wanted him to, he had to be exposed to this. 3 times the Roman soldiers, for preaching the gospel, snatched him up, stripped him naked, threw him down in front of folks so that everybody can see, and beat him with rods to make him shut up.
That's right.
But he kept on preaching.
Yes, sir.
He was stoned one time with rocks so big that they would crush his head. 3 times for him preaching the gospel, he had to travel on ships and they sank. And one time he was in the ocean for a day and a half just for preaching the gospel.
Yes,
and because of the gospel, he couldn't stay in one place. He was always on the move, and for that he was always in danger, having to cross rivers swollen during the rainy season, running for bandits wanting to steal the money. And it wasn't even his money. It was money that he had collected from one church, and another church needed the money. And he had to run because the crooks knew his path. Not only did he have to run from the crooks, he had to run from his own countrymen because they heard that he was coming that way and they wanted to kill him. So Paul cried. He said, I was in danger from my own country.